Hello, universe. Welcome to the world of Angelina Jordan. She's a 19-year-old Norwegian singer with an extraordinary talent and with millions of fans around the world. And because her talent is so extraordinary, so many of her fans crave any and all information we can get to understand what is behind her talent. And I believe if we want to understand Angelina, we must understand her granny, Mery Zamani, who is her role model. And they recently did an album together where Angelina did the music and Mery did the lyrics. But Mery Zamani is an intensely private person. And so we will have to dig deep to see what we can find today. When I was reviewing the album and I was discussing the relationship between the two of them, I suggested that Mery has never criticized Angelina Jordan, and that is one of the key factors of how Angelina has evolved. And Mery tells a wonderful story of how she wasn't criticized in circumstances where she could be.
The teapot mender. When I was a child, my days were filled with the sound of breaking porcelain. Cups, teapots, and dishes often slipped from my hands. My mother would worry, but my father, an athlete, a true champion, always answered with calm wisdom. His teapot has broken, so teapot mender may also have his share of bread. His wife and children deserve to eat too. In those small moments, I learned a great truth. Every crack carries a hidden purpose. Years later, those words became the foundation of my art. I began creating sculptures from fragments, covering the seams with gold leaf, turning what was once damaged into something luminous. I placed them at the doorway of my galleries, not merely as art, but as reminders. Hearts, like porcelain, can be mended too. From my father, I inherited more than strength. I inherited the courage to transform what is broken into something that endures.
This is a wonderful story full of awe and wonder. It's almost an enchanted story. Now, some parents would have said in a situation like that, "Oh, do be careful." Other parents would have even smacked the child. But it's a wonderful example of turning the negative into the positive in real life. And I love the use of the word champion in this story because he was an athlete and he was a champion, which makes perfect sense and fits. But also when you use the word champion like that, it means he was a man amongst men, and Mery obviously idolized him. But there's another use of the word champion, because you can champion just causes, which is exactly what Mery and Angelina do, where they promote charity. And Mery brings this same vein of non-criticism in my direction. Recently, I did a video where I was commenting on the songs and how I interpreted them. And I had the honor of Mery watching my video, and she sent cryptic replies. She didn't correct my observations, but she told parallel stories, which was a way of telling the circumstances behind the lyrics. So, when I spoke about faded ink, our conversation went something like this. First, my comments, and then Mery's magical story telling of the actual context. And when Mery writes about carrying your name like faded ink, it's a wonderful image of an old marriage certificate where the ink is fading.
I wear your name like faded ink.
From 1992 to 1997, I worked side by side with Professor Koichi Haneda on the book 55 Persian documents from the Qajar period. In the early years, there was no mention of Mr. Hashim Rajabzadeh. It was just the two of us, surrounded by dusty manuscript and fading ink.
And when I speak about fame or gold not being sought after in Mery's lyrics, she told another story to reconfirm that. They sang that they don't need any fame or fortune, That's exactly where Mery goes with her lyrics as well.
I don't need riches, fame or gold. Your quiet smile is all I hold.
Years later, I watched as Rajabzadeh, who joined much later, received a high royal decoration from the Emperor of Japan. I felt no bitterness. I simply smiled because I have never worked for medals or recognition. As I've often said in my poems, I never sought position, medal, or gold. I only sought the light that lives within words.
And then there is silence. I use 3 different examples of silence that I found in the lyrics on the album. And Mery told a wonderful story about silence in response. But silence is a very rich word. On one level, obviously, it can mean not speaking. But it also means no voice. It means being anonymous. It means being humble. And Mery uses images where silence turns into light. Mery has different images about silence. She talks about a suitcase of silence, which is a wonderful image because of the contrast between suitcase and silence.
Just a suitcase of silence.
Another image of silence is safe as silence in the trees, which is a wonderfully poetic image.
As safe as the silence that lives in the trees.
And with just 6 words, we have silence now where music once played, contrasting the current emptiness with the former joy.
Just silence now. Where music plays.
Still remember another day when he asked me to visit his PhD class. I walked into the room and all the students stood up to greet me. All, except one young man sitting at the back. My heart sank. I thought, perhaps he didn't like me or wanted to show disrespect. After class, I returned to Professor Haneda's office. As always, a cigarette rested between his fingers and his calm eyes met mine. Sensei, I said, I think not everyone liked me today. One student didn't stand up when I entered. He smiled softly, walked me to the window, and pointed toward the library. There, I saw the same young man sitting in a wheelchair. When our eyes met, he bowed deeply. Tears filled my eyes. That day, I learned something I'll never forget. Sometimes silence isn't disrespect. It's just another way of saying, I see you.
Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation.
But if you really wish to understand Mery, you have to do a lot of deep digging. And the first hint I got of all this was a couple of years ago when we interviewed Boris. Boris goes a long way back. He was one of Angelina's fans in the very earliest days. And when he met Mery and spoke to her, in their first conversation, she was speaking about comparative religions.
They always beat me in a religion, but I forgetting enough actually legends speak a religion, and not only knows it well, can show difference between religions.
And that's where we're going with today's video. We're going to discuss 3 major strands which strongly influence and permeate Mery. We're going to discuss Christianity, Persian culture and religion, and Zen Buddhism. Now, for Mery, the total is more than the sum of the parts. There's an exponential increase when you put the 3 together. And Mery has been able to extract the universal truths amongst different religions and integrate them into her being. Not just a casual integration, but 24/7 without interruption, so that this integration permeates her personality and goes to the depths of her heart. Mery doesn't wear her Christian belief on the surface. There's no fanfare with it. You have to scratch just beneath the surface, and it's all there. But when she tells a story like this, the Christian biblical references are obvious.
This album is a journey from silence to song, from sorrow to hope. Like a hidden star, it shines with new light upon every heart, a voice for the world, peace upon Abraham, Moses and Aaron, and peace upon Jesus, Spirit of God and messenger of love. Praise belongs only to the Creator who planted eternal love within our hearts.
And when she gives an image like this of the Last Supper, it's even more obvious.
Oh, my love.
I think I have to call Mery a Christian mystic. I don't know much about mysticism. Many of you may know more than I do. All I can and will say about it is that it is about the individual union with the divine. And I think that's a fair description of Mery Zamani. Next, we go to Persian culture and Persian influence. When Mery sent her comment about faded ink, it was a story around when she was doing scholarly work on ancient Persian texts. So she is well and truly immersed in Persian culture. And there's a wonderful photo with a wonderful story when Angelina was singing for the Prime Minister and the cabinet just after she won NGT. You remember? And in this story, her grandfather is part of the royal court.
This photo holds a timeless memory. After her concert for Statesman, Angelina stood in reverence before the portrait of King Olav V of Norway, the late father of today's monarch, King Harald V. It takes me back to my own childhood when King Harald, then Crown Prince, visited Iran and was hosted for a week by my grandfather at the royal court. I was only 5 years old when I had the honor of seeing him, and later my grandfather was invited to Norway in return. At that time, I could never have imagined that destiny would one day carry me to Norway. And now, many years later, I see my daughter Angelina honoring the father of the king with flowers, a gesture of respect that completes a circle of history.
But a big part of Persian culture is Sufism, where they talk about the annihilation or the passing away of the self in God. This could also come right out of Christianity as well.
They called it fana, annihilation, the dissolving of the self into the real.
And then there's overlap with Zen Buddhism, where they're talking about dissolving of oneself, where you give up your ego. This is beyond humility. This is not something very easy for Western people to understand. And in this story about her experience, which captures the essence of Zen Buddhism, think of St. Francis of Assisi, who came from a rich and noble background, but he gave up all material possessions, where he was only begging for food.
In Japan, I was a student, not of color, but of the school of Buddha, under the guidance of Tochi Yuri-san, the Japanese master of silence and humility, and Matsudo-san, the Korean painter. I learned that true art is born when one becomes empty of oneself, when silence becomes light. Matsudo-san was a man with a calm face and eyes that glowed from within. At night, He went into the streets, begging for his own food to purify his spirit and free it from pride. By day, he painted, and whatever he earned from his work, he gave to the truly poor. Our meeting began one quiet morning in Ueno Park. I sat on the stone steps while my two little children, Sarah and Michael, played beside me. The soft spring wind danced through the trees, and I watched the leaves, thinking of distance and longing. Then I saw him, a man sitting a few steps below me, quietly drawing with a piece of charcoal on a sheet of white paper. A few passers-by had gathered around him, waiting to buy his painting. I too stopped for a moment, and in that instant, time itself stopped. What I saw on the paper was the face of my own childhood, so alive, so timeless, as if my soul had stepped out of the past and taken form before my eyes. He looked up at me, his gaze deep and endless. In that single look, a world within me fell apart and another was born. Something awoke inside me that would never sleep again. I asked the bystanders, "Who is this man?" And after many questions, I found where he lived. Each night, I went to his door, knocked, and said softly, "It's me, Mary." He stayed silent and did not open the door until one night, in tears and prayer, a revelation came to my heart. I must no longer be me. I understood that the one at his door was not myself. It was him. The next night, I returned. I knocked again. From inside, a voice asked, "Who is standing at this door?" And I answered quietly, "You." In that moment, the door opened. A soft light touched my face. Matsudo smiled and said, "Now come in, for you are a seeker." From that day, the apprenticeship began, not of the hand, but of the soul. And I learned that every signature is a wall between a human being and truth. So instead of a name, I drew a circle, the symbol of zero. My paintings shone in great galleries, but I feared vanity, feared drifting away from truth. So even in success, I signed nothing but a circle, the mark of nothingness, because I understood in the circle, beginning and end are one. Zero and infinity turned together in the embrace of light. And in this journey, I became nothing, nothing at all, until the very moment that nothing itself gained a signature, not a mark of pride, but a name that came from the divine. Now, this signature you see, this name you hear, it is no longer me, but the reflection of that same light shining through my being. The circle I once drew as a sign of absence is now alive. It breathes, it speaks, it flows. It is not I, but he within me. And in that realization, I knew annihilation is not the end. It is the birth of a light that rises out of silence.
So Mary, in her own way, tries to describe her mystical evolution and her mystical credentials.
Through the decades, I have carried the story within me. It is a mystical and spiritual journey where reality and fantasy unite. My lived experiences in Japan, Norway, and the United States are interwoven with hidden cosmic codes and ancient magic. The story follows Mozart, where personal history merges with cosmic secrets. Since childhood, my poems were either left without a name, burned into silence, or hidden in sacks of flour and wheat, and sent away to the sea, as if I always wanted my words to find a path beyond myself. I left behind a life of luxury and entered an exile where nothing was familiar, a country like Japan with customs and a language far from my own. I saw myself equal to ordinary people, even lower, so that no honor or position would ever appear great in my eyes. For I believed a mystic must remain nameless and faceless for truth to reveal itself. So when I carried loads like an animal in Japan, it was never humiliation, but a practice of humility and the breaking of pride. I wanted to learn that no greatness or power belongs to us. Everything is only a trust placed in human hands. Yet poetry returned. It insisted on staying. And today, in Secret of the Soul, those very words rise with a call of dawn, with faith, with a sigh of prayer, and with the voice of Angelina Jordan reaching the world. A clear witness that the soul is stronger than every hardship. Secret of the Soul is not merely an album of music. It is a journey from chain to freedom, from ashes to light, from silence to an eternal voice given to the world.
But it is the synthesizing, it is putting together these three main strands, the Christianity, the Persian culture and religion, and the Zen Buddhism, which gives us universal truths. The famous Sufi poet Rumi said, "I am not, he is, and when I am not, he is seen," about the dissolving of oneself into God. And surprise, surprise, it all boils down to love. That's the main teaching of Christianity. And the Sufi poet Rumi also says it quite simply.
Love is the bridge between you and everything.
But not as simply as 10-year-old Angelina.
Kjærlighet betyr alt.
We have all been on quite the journey with Angelina and her extraordinary talent and her music. And Angelina has been on quite the journey with her granny as a role model and a major influence. And to trace Angelina's spiritual evolution, we have to track Mery's spiritual evolution. And Mery, if you are watching this, I have one word for you. Respect. Okay, let's end with hearing the fruits of their labor together, and let's hear a song from their recent album.
You hurt me more than words could say, but I stayed and made a home. I was bid to love, not leave, even when I felt alone. You used the warmth I gave you like it was yours to spend for free. But every scar you gave my heart was a deeper strength in me. And I forgave you every time, not 'cause I was weak but brave inside. You took my love and crossed the line, but I still stood by your side. Each time I let you in again, you came back harder, cold as stone. But I was never made to run. I was made to make a home. Called it fate when things went wrong, but you knew just what you did. Not by chance, it was your choice. And Still I always let you in. I never ask for perfect love, just honesty and grace. But you were my kindness like a mask, and vanished without a trace. And I forgave you every time, not 'cause I was weak but brave inside. You took my love and crossed the line, but I still stood by your side. Each time I let you in again, you came back hard, a cold as stone. But I was never made to run. I was made to make a home. This pain, it wasn't mine to carry. It was yours